Right, we are also starting our live streams now, and now we are 1 minute past the hour, so let's get this show on the road. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody again, and thank you for joining this LF Decentralized Trust webinar with Dino, who is the Chief Information Officer at United Nations Joint Staff Pension Fund. And today he's going to be talking about digital identity in action and how they transform the UN Pension Fund global operations with blockchain, biometrics, AI, and geolocalization services. I'm looking forward to this webinar, so we're going to get started in a moment. But before we get going, I would like to emphasize that everybody is welcome in our community, and we strive to create a safe and welcoming environment for everybody. So please follow our code of conduct when interacting with each other on this webinar and in a broader community as well. And you can find our code of conduct on our website and on our wiki. Some general housekeeping rules. Please know that all our webinars are held under the under the Linux Foundation antitrust policy, which you can find on our website and on our wiki as well. This session is being recorded, and you will be able to find the recording on our webinar library, along with the slides which you can download. So if you're missing anything on this webinar, you can always go back there and find it over there. This webinar is also being live streamed on YouTube and LinkedIn Live, so welcome to everybody that's joining us there. We also encourage these sessions to be as interactive as possible, and the more interaction we have, the better experience for everyone. So whenever you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and to get unmuted and to speak up. And please also feel free to use the chat button as well as the Q&A buttons to ask your questions, and we will address them at the end of the webinar. And for those of us joining us on LinkedIn Live and YouTube, please use the comment section to ask your questions, and we will relay them to our panelists here as well. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Dino, who's Chief Information Officer at United Nations Staff Joint Pension Fund. And Dino will be able to tell you more how the digital identity was transformed in the United Nations. Dino, over to you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you for the kind introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody, depending where are you connecting from. I'm based in New York at the United Nations Pension Fund headquarters. And just few words of introduction regarding myself. I've been with the United Nations for almost 25 years. My background and my previous assignment were in auditing, specifically in IT auditing. For almost 10 years, I was the Chief IT Auditor of the United Nations. And in 2017, I was appointed Chief Information Officer here at the United Nations Pension Fund. And that's when I started this journey associated with the digital identity solution that I'm going to present today. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to put it into slideshow. I hope you can all see the screen. Thomas, can you confirm that the screen is visible?
Yes, looks good, Dino. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So first and foremost, very brief data and parameters related to the United Nations Pension Fund. We are the pension fund of the entire UN system. We serve 24 member organizations. Actually, most recently, we admitted an additional one. So now we are 25. We pay on a regular basis, on an annual basis, approximately 86,000 benefit, and we have approximately 150,000 participants. In terms of value of our asset, one of the latest evaluation, of course, as you can appreciate, the market value is a dynamic indicator, but as of July 2024, we are almost on 94 billion. And as you can see, one of the indicators of which we are very proud of is that we are fully funded. Actually, the funded ratio as of 31st of December 2023 was 111%. This is the list of the member organization. I assume, and I'm sure that you probably recognize many of them within our membership. And this is our partner, the United Nations International Computing Center, which actually is the entity that did develop the application and the solution itself. Thanks to the technical expertise of our colleagues at UNSJPF, with whom we have been working for several years, and we are partner. We also are representing the management committee. I was able to define the problem, identify the solution, and with them being able to document exactly the solution itself, which in technical terms was implemented and was developed by our colleagues. UNSCC is almost equivalent to the UN Pension Fund, is an interagency organization that serves the entire UN system, and they have the technical expertise in different domains, in different services, and it is an entity with whom we work very closely. So definitely, I want to acknowledge and recognize my UNICC colleagues for the tremendous added value that they provided to our case. Mirko, I see that you're raising your hand. Are you all able to see my screen? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So moving on, the definition of the problem. So as I alluded to, when I joined the UN Pension Fund, at that time, I was told by then Chief Executive Officer that the United Nations Pension Fund had an historical problem. And the problem was associated with the fact that although pretty much 99% of all the processes and function of the pension fund had been digitalized, and they had been automated with the support of the various technologies, there was still one process that unfortunately was perceived to be a big problem for our user and our retirees and beneficiaries associated with the proof of life. The fact that each one of our retirees and beneficiaries that live in more than 190 countries, on a yearly basis, they need to demonstrate that they are still alive. This process, historically, for 70 years, was managed through a manual paper-based form, which the fund, on a yearly basis, mailed through more than 190 postal services to each one of our beneficiary retiree, approximately 72,000, although the 86,000 pertains to the benefit in payment, and asking them to sign this form and return it through the same 190 postal services. Of course, as you can appreciate, this process was often prone to delays or to errors, or actually in some cases to the fact that either the recipient or the UN Pension Fund itself did not receive the signed form. And that, unfortunately, led to a situation where the fund, if did not receive the signed document, was forced by the regulation, the rules of the pension fund, to suspend the payment, with, of course, as you can imagine, very serious consequences on the well-being of the household, because they not only stop the payment of the pension benefit, but also stop the health insurance associated with that status. So we resolve this problem by designing a digital version of this proof of life mechanism. And this, what you see now on the screen, is the actual screenshot of the app and the posting that in 2021 we published on our internet website to announce the deployment into production of the solution. And in the following slides, I'm going to walk you through the component of the solution, as well the steps that we follow. So the old process was fundamentally a centralized process where the pension fund from its headquarters here in New York, or the office that we have in Geneva, mailed these forms to each one of our retirees and beneficiaries across the world, as I alluded to before, asking them to sign that form and return it to us through the same means, meaning more than 109 postal services. The new process, instead, is a decentralized process, where instead, through an application that each one of our clients can download on their mobile device, they can actually process the proof that they're still alive and then send it to us directly by receiving also an immediate notification of the receipt of that issuance, that we call it in technical terms, the digital certificate of an entitlement. It's another word, other terms to indicate the demonstration of proof of life. So when looking at the problem, we had to break down the issue into its value component. And specifically, we identify 4 components and the need to provide 4 proofs. The proof of identity at the very beginning, when we enroll and onboard our client into the solution, and every time after that, the proof of authentication. The proof of existence, also referred to as a proof of life. The proof of the transaction, in order to make sure that we created a record that could be independently auditable, and a proof of location, because in our benefit system, we have instances where our retirees and beneficiaries can elect to receive their benefit into a local currency. And in those cases, for us, it's mandatory to also confirm where do they reside in order to take into account potential changes in the cost of living. So along with these 4 proofs, there were other associated basic requirements, such as the requirement to ensure security, reliability, transparency, accountability, and of course, attribution, in order to make sure that at any given time, we can demonstrate the link between the data of the transaction and the identities of our users. Also, being part of the United Nations system, we also had to demonstrate that whatever we were doing, whatever we were designing in terms of a new solution with innovative technology, was going to be aligned with the overarching strategy of our organization. And here I included the main one, such as the strategy of new technologies issued in 2018 by our Secretary General, the UN 2.0, the Quintet of Change, which is an initiative that, again, spearheaded by our Secretary General to innovate within the UN system. Of course, the Sustainable Development Goals, and more specifically, the one related to the need to support and ensure legal entity, so target 16.9, and as well the principal issue within the AI for Good led by ITU, the International Telecommunication Union. So here is our main governing body, the General Assembly, that indeed demanded accountability in whether and how the UN Pension Fund was applying due diligence in the adoption of this new technology. And fundamentally, as you will see in some of the following slides, being able to answer an impossible question, which is, how can you demonstrate that there is no fraud in a process based on manual form that are mailed through 190 postal services asking people to sign and return? And the point is that proving a negative is impossible. Hence our approach to prove a positive, again, with the technical expertise and support of our colleagues from the United Nations International Computing Center. So we adopted blockchain technologies, biometrics technology, specifically facial recognition, artificial intelligence, more recently added in order to address the threats presented by deepfakes, and hence what I coined the term fighting AI with AI, and geolocalization for the reason that I alluded to before. So blockchain was adopted in order to create an immutable and independently auditable ledger that it would be traceable in terms of who did what, when, and how, and creating fundamentally with the hashing mechanism a triple entry distributed ledger. Now, why blockchain? Especially at the very beginning of my presentation, when after going live, I was often questioned as whether the UN Pension Fund and fundamentally myself specifically, I was trying to do something that was perceived to be trendy by adopting this new technology. But the problem is that, of course, what it can be implemented through a blockchain can also be implemented through a distributed database. However, the adoption, the implementation of a distributed database present problems, present issues, such as the fact that there will be central control, where instead we wanted to have no central control, where we could decide who can participate. Indeed, we designed and implemented a private blockchain, which is only for our beneficiary and retirees, support privacy, and created a mutable ledger. And here in the first bullet point, I specifically alluded to the fact that having a distributed database would have meant that there would be a database administrator, a database administrator that ultimately reports to me, and that, as we know, would have some super user access, and therefore always the possibility to potentially be questioned as to whether data can be manipulated, unless certain mechanism related to hashing, related to logging would be implemented, which ultimately are exactly the mechanism that are supported and implemented through the use of the blockchain. So hence, this is a very summary slide to explain the rationale behind choosing a blockchain technology. The second technology is biometrics in order to provide proof of authentication or proof of life using, as I indicated before, facial recognition, which is stored only on the user device, used to authenticate with event recorded on the blockchain. And here I want to put emphasis on the concept of event and not on data, because I don't want to give the impression that the PII, personally identifiable information, may be stored on the blockchain, even if encrypted. In our case, there are no PII, there are no biometric information, even encrypted, that at any time are stored on the blockchain. They always remain on the device of the user under their control. Only the events associated with the process are stored on the blockchain. And the GPS, as I alluded to before, in order to capture and determine the record location only for those specific cases where users have adopted for a specific regime of being paid in local currency. Artificial intelligence, I already mentioned, in order to prevent and detect potential deepfakes. And indeed, I'm now in contact with a potential accredited vendor to submit our algorithm with the AI to a presentation attack detection testing in accordance with this ISO standard that you see on the screen, ISO 30107-3, that basically present a list of tests, level 1, level 2, plus additional image injection to verify and demonstrate the ability of an algorithm based on AI to withstand potential deepfakes. And I hope to be able to complete this process by the end of the first quarter of this year. The application. So this is an actual screenshot of the application taken from the Apple App Store. As you can see, it's also being recorded under the name of our colleagues, as I alluded to before, the International Computing Center. These are some of the screenshots of the application. And these are some ratings that we were able to achieve. Definitely at the very beginning, we did not have such a good rating, but over time, as I said, we went live in 2021, and over time, we were able to achieve some good feedback. So some information about the architecture, the design pattern, and the decision model, to go a little bit into more details. We are talking about fundamentally a solution that is based and references the concept of self-sovereign identity. So we are following the category of the design pattern that is categorized under decentralized identifies document, the dates, with a decision model based on security, and that are predicated on identifier registry, the ability to support multiple registration, creating pairing between blockchain and accounts, and dual resolution, with a decision model focused on authentication and authorization. These are some slides that I actually took from Hyperledger itself, from at that time, now decentralized trust, to depict the concept of self-sovereign identity and the triad and distinction between identity issuer, holder, and verifier. And this is the concept of verifiable credential with the process and the workflow. This is our actual process related to the enrollment that can be done either by us for retirees and beneficiary, or by our member organization, those 25 member organizations that I alluded to at the beginning of my presentation, that can start enrolling active participant, basically staff member, when they are close to the retirement time. So let's say within the last 6 months of their service, they start the separation process. And we started to work with them by introducing as one of the steps of the separation process, the enrollment in the digital identity for proof of life that we have created. This is the workflow, the diagram that depicts how our user ultimately are able to use the application, their device, and issue the digital certificate that is reflected in terms of events and public keys associated with the transaction on the blockchain itself. And here we have the component, the web-based administrator side, the mobile application, and of course, the blockchain itself. So, few details about the technology itself. We use the Hyperledger Indy framework, which is a framework specifically designed to support decentralized digital identity, along with the libraries provided by the Hyperledger areas. These are some details of our tech stack. On the left side, the one related to the mobile application, and on the right side related to the all other components, some of which I already mentioned vis-a-vis the Hyperledger areas for the blockchain and other components. Now, this is a clarification because, as I alluded to before, during some of my initial presentation of the solution, there was always some question about, yes, but what exactly goes on the blockchain? What type of data? Can those data be associated, can be hacked, can be misused? And here, I, again, with the support of the technical expertise of my colleague in UNSJPF, I extracted the information that clearly indicate, for example, that we have transaction validation data root hash, the transaction type, the timestamp, and the public signature of the sender. These are the element and the key data that are stored on the blockchain itself. So, of course, the benefit and the sustainability of the application were the big topic, especially when reporting to our governing bodies. And here is where I started to categorize the immediate and also the medium and the long-term benefit that we have started to achieve and we started to forecast vis-a-vis the use of the application. First and foremost, we eliminated the paper-based processes. We simplified, as a consequence of that, the onboarding process, and we enhanced the accessibility of the process itself, because our user no longer need to wait for a paper-based form to be mailed to their residence, but they can start the process at any given time within 365 days of each year. We eliminated also the printing, the mailing, and the archiving of this paper-based form, with, of course, as you can appreciate, substantial savings in terms of sustainability and in terms of impact on our real estate, on the physical devices, on the space that usually is needed, not only from the point of view of the archiving, the physical archiving, but also the logical archiving that was often associated with the scanning of the forms received with the signature of our users. Of course, we enhanced the signature verification. Fundamentally, as you can see on the left side, that's the real form that our user were required to sign and return. And this process, although we recently adopted an electronic verification signature system that is the same system utilized by financial institutions and banks to confirm the authenticity of signature on checks, still was often subject to manual verification. And therefore, by using biometric authentication, by digitalizing the process, we got away with this manual, labor-intensive process. And again, by removing any potential single point of failure, by optimizing the blockchain and ensuring its efficiency by the distribution, the decentralization, but also redundancy. Indeed, the blockchain is now implemented on 2 different cloud solutions in order to ensure, again, the potential kill switch and avoid single point of failure. This is the evolution. First and foremost, we have a lot of lessons learned. And one of the lessons learned was that we started to understand that in certain parts of the world, some of our users either do not have a smart device, they cannot afford, or even if they do have it, they may not have a most updated device that has the hardware security module, the HSM, that is required for our application to store the private key on the hardware component of the device, or they don't have phone that are connected to data and to the internet. Therefore, we were faced with the need to find an alternative, an option. And this is now represented by kiosks, fundamentally iPads, that we have already tested. And we are now in the process to collaborate with our colleagues in the field offices of the UN around the world, and especially in certain parts of the world where this issue is more prominent, and trying to install kiosks in the local office of the United Nations, whether, again, our users have 1 year to complete this process, they can visit their local office of the UN and conduct the proof of life process by using one of these kiosks without needing to have the latest version of a smartphone device, without having to have necessary a data plan associated with their account, and so forth and so on. The other important evolution of the solution was the fact that the highest coordinating body of the UN system as a whole, the Chief Executive Board, shortly after our go live, decided to adopt the same approach with the same underlying technology. And again, the common denominator of both of the solutions is our colleagues, the United Nations International Computing Center, to create the UN digital ID for the UN staff members. So they realized that the UN Pension Fund had created a digital identity solution for when the staff member retire and leave the organization. And therefore, the CEB, the Chief Executive Board, decided instead to start creating a digital identity solution for when the staff member are actually hired or are active participants working in the organization to manage a series of use cases. Again, associated with the pension data that it's regularly transferred to us, but also associated with entitlement, associated with the medical clearance, with security clearance, and many other use cases that now are going to be supported by this application. I alluded to before when I introduced myself that my background is in auditing. And therefore, immediately after going live with the application, or even before, one of my biggest concerns was, how can I demonstrate that this solution is trustworthy, is secure, is reliable in front of a governing body composed of representatives of 193 countries? So here's when I started my quest to find any type of best practices, industry standard, and especially given that I am and I was a former ISO auditor, try to see whether the ISO organization had specific standard for blockchain, which unfortunately did not have. There is a vocabulary, there is a technical committee 307 that is working on the development of a certification standard for blockchain, but that is not yet available. So for the lack of better option, I adopted a standard with which I'm very familiar in my previous capacity, but both in my capacity as CIO before auditing, now implementing, which is the ISO 27001, which is the ISO standard for information security management system. And therefore, the first certification, the first audit that I submitted a solution was exactly this standard. And the Bureau Veritas, which is an accredited entity, independent entity, accredited to conduct this certification audit, review, conducted the certification assessment, and issued the certification, which is not a one-time process, but is associated with annual surveillance audit for 3 years. And then every 3 years, we are subject to a re-certification process, which we are currently undertaking. The other two standards that I alluded to one before, as also you can see, I emphasize and underline the word in progress in this slide, is the ISO 30107, which is not a certification standard, but is an attestation demonstrating whether or how a biometric with AI is able to withstand presentation attack detection. But the other one is actually a certifiable standard, the ISO 42001, which is the very new and most recent standard issued by ISO for artificial intelligence management system. So we are preparing also to certify the AI component of the solution in accordance with these standards. Given that we have an algorithmic, biometric algorithm to support the facial recognition process, we also submitted the algorithm itself to an independent assessment conducted by third-party subject matter expert. We submitted, thanks to our colleagues at UNSJPF, also the algorithm itself to this free service that the NIST of the United States offers to any vendor that is involved in facial recognition technology. And we also hire and engage a subject matter expert in cybersecurity to conduct a review of the solution, not only in accordance with specific domain of cybersecurity, but also with specific technical standard issued by our colleagues in the ITU, specifically for blockchain, as well as privacy. Of course, again, given that PII are very much part of the concern of our community, of our user, we also submitted the application and the solution to an assurance vis-a-vis the privacy controls. Some lesson learned. So during implementation, I alluded to the fact that we went live in 2021. Hence means that the previous testing before going live and the whole development of the solution actually occurred during the pandemic. And as I indicated in this slide, make sure that you always have a plan B, because if it wasn't for our colleague, the United Nations International Computing Center, we would have not able to go live. We had to transform a plan that at that time was intended to be supported by field visit, in-person visit to the various field offices and location where we do have our retirees and beneficiary, and showcase the application, explain the application when the enforcement of the ban, the travel ban, was introduced, we had over almost overnight completely transformed our approach. We had to create, again, thanks to UNSJPF, they created an appointment and scheduling component of the application, and we instituted through our call center a remote and digital enrollment and onboarding process through video calls. Therefore, don't assume anything. And also, we realize that just by writing instruction, even detailed instruction, doesn't mean that everybody is going to read it. And hence, you will see in other slides of this presentation, the key component of communication is a critical component of the success of any type of implementation, especially when dealing with innovative technologies. There is, of course, a domain of integration. As you can see, this is not only one technology, but it's a convergence. There is an integration of blockchain, biometric, artificial intelligence. So this presents issue of potential scalability and performance, biometric data storage, and as I alluded to before, digital divide. The first bullet point, be ready for surprises. We experience that although our users have 365 days to issue their digital certificate every year, we experience an overwhelming volume of certificates that are issued during the first days of every year. And we were very concerned about the capability of our blockchain, which by default is renowned for not being the most performing technology. We were concerned that the blockchain will have not been able to withstand this overwhelming volume of transaction. But we were surprised by the fact that in actuality, the blockchain was actually very much capable of resisting, also thanks to the fact that we deployed on the cloud, and in the cloud we were able to calibrate the resource necessary for the process at hand. But we instead face different type of limitation, for example, in the database associated with the web administration. So here, the concept of be ready for surprise. The assurance, again, as I demonstrated before, unfortunately, emerging technology means also emerging standard. When start using, adopting, implementing innovative technology, emerging technology, and wanted to demonstrate that the adoption of this technology is indeed aligned with best practices, with international standards, encounters a lot of limitation because we don't have yet, the example of the blockchain certification that is still not available, we do not yet have standards to demonstrate that indeed a blockchain solution has been developed, has been implemented, is being managed in accordance with specific standards that are recognized at the international level. Also, the importance of the artificial intelligence dual role, as I alluded to before, definitely a tool that can help, but also can be a threat. So being able to understand that to use this potent technology in the right way and be mindful of the pros, the cons, the positive, and the negative. And the fact, again, I indicated this before, that the certification is not a one-time process, but it's a continuous improvement as the ISO standard requires over time. And here's some strategy for user adoption. Invest early. I alluded to the critical importance of communication. Invest early in user awareness education. Try to capture continuous feedback from the user and try to adopt a gradual implementation approach while disclosing information, especially technical information, in a paced manner in order to avoid overwhelming or confusing the end user, and also try to gradually implement feature. Try to stick with the basics at the beginning, and then, if possible, of course, gradually move with the add-on and enhancement of the application itself. And here, indeed, as you can see, the slide related to communication is the slide with more detail. Prioritize a user-centric design, simplify complex concept, diversify the communication channel, and address misconception proactively. This specifically was something that we experienced. Unfortunately, when we very proudly announced that they were using a blockchain, we shortly after realized that the blockchain term was often interpreted as a synonym of Bitcoin, with a series of concern and criticism that were raised about the UN adopting a technology that was depleting the natural resources, energy, electricity, and so forth and so on. So very important to pay attention to communication and to monitor the feedback of the user and to avoid technical jargon. Some acknowledgement and recognition. First and foremost, we receive an award from the UN Secretary General on Innovation Sustainability. We receive also a Social Impact Award from the Government Blockchain Association, which is an association dedicated to the development, not specific of a standard, but of a BMM, a blockchain maturity model based in Washington, D.C., but also collaborating with one of the initiatives that I will mention later on within the UN Internet Governance Forum. We were also the subject of a Gartner study vis-a-vis our digital transformation journey and the design and implementation of the solution. And also there was an article from the Investment and Pension Europe on our project. And here is the presentation made last year at the World Summit of Information Society, where I had the privilege of being joined on the stage by Scott Stornada, that by most is considered to be the co-inventor of the blockchain technology itself, along with the representative of the Global Blockchain Business Council, Sandra Bro, a representative of the Vatican City State, talking about ethical dimension of the use of innovative technology, and along my colleague, Dimitri Ralli from UNICC, which at that time was leading the UN Digital ID project. So these are some of the partners with whom we are collaborating. I alluded to before GBA, also in ATBA, specifically in Europe, GBBC, and of course, the Linux Foundation for Decentralized Trust. So here is a call for action in order to conclude my presentation. Within the United Nations Internet Governance Forum, which is a forum that has now been taking place every year for 19 years, I created with the president of the GBA a dynamic coalition, basically a working group on trying to create consensus and recommendation for blockchain assurance standardization. This working group is open to everybody. There are no fees. There are no costs associated. So for those who are interested in working on this domain to build fundamentally trust, not only on blockchain, but also on emerging technology, please follow the LinkedIn and follow our posting related to today. We meet once a month on the third Monday of every month. Final thoughts. The importance of digital identity is very much still a huge problem. And indeed, this I extracted from the blog, the World Bank, our colleagues at the World Bank, the outcome and the result of their research indicated that still today, 850 million people do not have an identity. I also have, I'm going to thank you. I'm thanking you for your attention. If there is a possibility now to address some question, I will be more than happy to do so. Otherwise, I will do it offline. But also to let you know, in the presentation, I also include an appendix, because in some instances, again, when I start making presentation and I was questioned and challenged as why I use blockchain, I started to try to support my choice also with the rigor of academic research. And in this slide, I made references and I mentioned some of these academic paper that are written exactly for the purpose of explaining whether and when blockchain is an adequate technology. It's definitely not a solution to all problems, but it is a good solution to certain problems, along with other guidance issued by in the fourth bullet point by the World Economic Forum, such as this, some decision trees to help organizations to determine when and how to use blockchain, and also by NIST. And with that, thank you very much. And if there is time for questions, I'd be more than happy to address them. Thank you. Back to you, Thomas.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dino. Yeah, there are a couple of questions in the chat, and maybe you can just have a look at them, Dino, and then you can address them, yes, one by one. And I do believe that some of them you covered already.
Okay.
But by the time you have a look at those, there's also 2 questions in the Q&A box. Let me just ask to some of you that have been asking if there's a recording available, just so you know that it's going to be available right after the webinar on our YouTube channel and on our LinkedIn page. And then in a day or 2, you'll be able to see it on our webinar library, and I'm going to share the link here. And the slides will be uploaded there as well, so you can return to any of these topics that Dino covered. So we have about 10 minutes left, Dino, and then you're welcome to take some of these questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Thomas. So I'm scrolling through the chat. If I'm reading it correctly, the first question was Patrick Neal says, how do you manage when a person who has 2 or 3 devices which share the same biometric information, such as a burner phone? Well, yeah, indeed. The application is intended to be installed either on a smartphone or on a tablet. Fundamentally, for us, the most important element is the biometric recognition. So I don't think that it will be useful for a user to install it on a burner phone, because it is intended, the application, to be used on a regular basis. But fundamentally, it's, if you will, it doesn't really matter on which device it is, because ultimately what we rely on is the enrollment, is the onboarding process. They have to go through an enrollment process in order to create the binding between the device and their biometric profile. So once they do that, we are witnessing that indeed the person that is going through the onboarding process is the person that is intended to be part of our beneficiary, because we send invites to people to join the onboarding process. Of course, the process is voluntary, so they then respond to the invite, and therefore, as I alluded to, this is a private blockchain solution. It's not public, and only pre-identified user can join the solution. Then there is a second question from Nicholas Piqueres. How many pensioners are you paying every month, and what is the total USA monthly payment of all pension? So I think this was in one of the initial slides. We manage 86,000 payments, but there are cases where pension benefit for specific reason, like minor children, surviving spouses, there is someone who receives more than one benefit payment. So specifically, the approximate amount is around probably 72,000 retirees that we serve. Patrick Neal again asked, is the financial institution account information the blockchain? How is electronic transfer of funds validated from the UN to the staff financial institution? So no, the short answer is no. There are no payment information, no financial information stored on the blockchain or in the app for that matter. And the transfer of fund, the payment of fund is done in our ERP system through our corresponding bank and to the treasury system that we manage. So there is no information related to payment or connection related to payment. This is only the input that is required by our ERP to determine whether that beneficiary should continue to receive the payment or not. But everything else is done in a different system. Okay, the recording has already been addressed by Thomas. This is a question from Marwan. You can see the record. Oh, okay, this is the recording again. LinkedIn, in a day or 2 download. The Sankarshan Thank you for the excellent walk through the design thinking about this digital transformation. Clarifying question, is the agency looking at digital wallet on the mobile device as well? Basically, yes, indeed. When I presented the evolution of the solution, the creation of a UN digital identity for staff member, basically we're talking about a digital wallet. And it's the same concept. The digital wallet, if you will, in the solution that we have already implemented for the retiree, it's a single purpose driven. It's not really a wallet because it only supports one function, but we have a plan to extend the feature that we want to include on this application, and therefore it will become a full-fledged digital wallet. Can anyone join the IGR get created? Yes, confirmed. As I said, it's free, and there are plenty of information on the LinkedIn, on the website. Please email me, and I'll give you also additional information on how to join our monthly meeting. Can you send the link for the recording and slides? Okay. How large a development team or group did you have working on this? Excellent question. So this is a question from my colleagues at UNSJPF. I believe they were probably around, if I remember correctly, around 10 people, more or less, specifically technical developers within UNSJPF. And of course, in the UN Pension Fund and my team, I had additional staff supporting the requirement, the security, the certification process, and so forth. The recording, again, LinkedIn page, okay. Abidun Oni, how can the UN Digital Identity Initiative help address challenges related to financial inclusion and access to essential services across Africa? What steps are being taken to ensure the digital identity system in Africa is inclusive, culturally sensitive, accessible to undeserved community? How can African nations collaborate with the UN to build a robust framework for protecting citizens' data privacy and security within digital identity? So, Abidun, that's a very good question. I think the easier answer is join the United Nations Internet Governance Forum. There are 32, 31 dynamic coalition blockchain. There are plenty of sessions every year, best practice forum that are, I can assure you, are dedicated exactly to address the question that you're asking. Nader, all the data stored in user device. What will happen if the device is damaged? It can be used again. Is the client app connected to cloud to save the data? So the short answer is that there is a need to re-enroll in the solution when the device becomes damaged. However, we have recently implemented some mechanism, some solution that make this process much, much, much faster. They do not necessarily require them to go through a video call, but there is a sharding of the key and so forth and so on. So without going into too many technical details, we have already addressed. And if you saw in one of my slides, I took an extract of the Sovereign Foundation, which is the entity that donated Hyperledger, donated the Sovereign blockchain to became then Hyperledger, that is specifically dedicated to the question, what if I lose my phone? So that also speaks about this. Kelly, any specific change management exercise followed? Did you follow any specific CM framework, and which one? So definitely, I'm not sure whether we follow specific change management framework, but we definitely did go through that process in order to update our back office operation to support this process. Which entity or entities will cover the cost of the private blockchain network and cloud service cost? If and when this platform scales to millions or billions of users, the cost of the private network will be exponentially large. Well, as I alluded to before, we do not have millions or billions of users. We only have, as specifically addressed, 72,000 individuals. So we don't expect to reach that volume of user, but the cost is basically all incurred by the UN Pension Fund, which, as I said, with the savings that we have been able to achieve, by not having to print, don't have to archive, not having to have people doing manual verification, it started to be significantly offset by those savings. Is this implementation analogous to ECBDC, which also requires device locking? It does not let dispersed money to be spent in place and authorized. As I said, I think you're making reference to central bank digital currency. This is not a cryptocurrency. It does not support, at least for now, we are not supporting any type of token or any type of currency. Oh, there is some comment about the link that's not working. Maybe they will be addressed after. Does it also include liveness detection system? Yes, this is a question from Drew Wang. Yes, it does include the proof of life indeed. The biometric algorithm does check, and during the verification, the user is not only asked to look at the camera, but also to make certain movement, exactly to confirm the liveness of the user. Kelly, CM not for development, for the whole project. Change management. Again, I don't think that we specifically use a framework, but I will investigate further, and I can provide an answer to the change management framework. Thank you. Is there a link where we could sign up? Yes, go back back to you, Thomas.
Maybe we can take one more question, but then we're unfortunately going to have to wrap up. I'm very glad to hear that people are so interested in the solution. But one thing, maybe, Dino, I do believe that you included the Internet Governance Forum website on the presentation, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. If you Okay, great. If you don't mind adding that link, I think a lot of people are interested in joining that.
Yeah.
And that's what Kelly was asking as well, if everybody can join. And, you know, Dina also mentioned that you're welcome to do that. There you go. Thank you, Dina. I think, unfortunately, I shared the wrong link before, but this one's good. Thank you very much.
No problem. No.
So maybe we can just take one last question that is maybe not, you know, that hasn't been addressed yet. There's also in the Q&A box, there's a few. Yeah, and otherwise, and another question that I see often there, how can people reach you, Dino? So for any follow-up.
Yeah, the best, I think the best approach will be through LinkedIn. Let me try to briefly put some additional details. My LinkedIn, but it's enough to put my name and last name. Trying to get my link so that I can put it on the chat. Sorry, it's taking a little bit long.
Thank you, Dino. You can just do that in the meantime, and I'll just wrap it up because we are closing to the, reaching the end of the presentation. So first of all, thank you so much, Dino, for this great presentation. And as you can see, you know, a lot of people are engaging, want to know more. So that's always great to see. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today and for all of your interest in this topic. It was a great session, and thank you for all the great questions there as well. Now, before we leave, I would also invite you to have a look at our events page to learn about upcoming webinars, but also the live events where LF Decentralized is present on. Visit also our meetup page to learn about upcoming meetups, which are both live and so in person, and also the online meetups. And finally, I also share the Discord channel in our chat, but also feel free to join our Discord. It's a lot of real-time communication. If you need any information about different projects, special interest groups, working groups, and so on, this is the place where you will get the information the most quickly. If you're a corporation or a corporate looking this webinar, you're welcome to reach out to us to see how you can join as a member. Thank you again for watching. Thank you again, Dino, and thank you everybody for joining. The webinar recording will be available on YouTube channel right after, well, It will be just now, as well as on our LinkedIn. And then in a day or two, we'll also be uploading it to our webinar library, where you can also download the slides in there. Thank you so much for today, and looking forward to seeing you next time. Dino, I think you also added everything in the chat, right? That was needed to, so I think we can also wrap it up.
Perfect. Yes, I was able to put my LinkedIn. The IGF website is currently down for maintenance, so I ask people to contact me directly on LinkedIn, and I'll provide this specific information about the dynamic coalition or UNIGF.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much, Dino. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and see you next time.
Thank you.